Yeah. Let's go. We just gotta go hard. I go the hardest. I bring the pain. Not what you used to. It's all part of the game. Yeah. I just gotta go hard. I just gotta go hard. I just gotta go hard.
From the field to the film room to the war room, we've got you covered every step of the way as the road to the draft starts right now on BGN Radio. Hello and welcome to another episode of the BGN Draft Show. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter and YouTube at Shane Haff NFL. I'm joined today by my co-host, fellow draft enthusiast, Dives. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mr. Crockpot. Be sure to check out his college football podcast, Party on Broad. Dives, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. We're entering week 6, and it is about to get super juicy with a lot of these teams, especially Pac-12 teams, as they start to get ready to face off. But this week, we have a great one between Texas and Oklahoma that we're going to break down. It's going to be an amazing battle.
Yeah, I'm going to do this on the podcast because they won't throw a flag on it. Since I'm not on the field. Also joined by my co-host, who I'm going to say is dead to me now for doing that sacrilegious symbol. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. _ or don't. You know, it's up to you. Be sure to check out his Tough Cover radio show every Saturday, or don't. Mark, how are you doing this evening?
I'll save my thoughts on that game for our Game of the Week segment, but I'm very excited to be here. I think it's one of the more fun college football seasons, and shaping up to be one of the more fun college football seasons of all time. There's just so many good quarterbacks, so many teams in the picture of the college football playoff. And if there's ever been a season to kind of show the need for a bigger playoff and a 12-team playoff, it's this one, because there's so many teams I'd like to see in a bigger playoff.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get too far into the show, let's go back and recap our Player of the Week predictions from last week. Dibes took running back Blake Corum out of Michigan, who had 16 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown against Nebraska. Mark was unable to make the podcast, so we gave him the worst kicker in college football. And I took wide receiver Xavier Leggett out of South Carolina, who, although he had 5 catches for 50 yards, that was easily his worst performance of the year. So, Dives, I think you get the point on this one for your Player of the Week selection. So, now let's turn the page and we'll look at this week.
I was going to take Caleb, let it be known. Caleb Williams did have a good game, but I don't get the point. I wasn't here.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, before we get into our Player of the Week predictions this league, let's talk Eagles prospect profiles. Spoiler alert, a few of these are going to come from our Game of the Week. We're going to be all over the Game of the Week this league, but let's get into our Eagles targets of the week. All right, Dibes, lead us off here. Who is your Eagles prospect to watch this weekend?
A guy I really like out of Texas. He is JT Sanders. Currently my tight end number 2 so far in the 2024 class. 6'4", 249 pounds. Great size, great length, very good blocker, amazing athlete. He was a 5-star recruit out of high school. Potential mismatch weapon at the next level. He's a guy that's too athletic for linebackers and safeties, too big and physical for corners. Has had some big moments. He's kind of been up and down this year for Texas. I mean, just that's kind of Quinn Ewers' thing, right? But, you know, he's had like a game where he has 5 catches, well over 100 yards, then 2 catches and nothing. And then he has 5 catches and 100 yards. Last week, he had 2 catches and nothing. This week, I expect him to have a huge game here against Oklahoma. The tight end class, I think, is pretty solid. But when you get, there's like tiers, right? And you have Brock Bowers is going to be a top 10 pick. Then there's JT Sanders. After that, it's kind of just a bunch of guys that are in that same tier. Guys like Jaheim Bell, guys like Ben Sinnott, Brevin Spanford, Cade Stover, Bryson Nesbitt, Tyler Warren out of Penn State. All those guys are probably day 2, day 3 guys. So there is a drop off. And that's why I like this guy for the Eagles. Maybe like a day 2 selection, round 2 probably. So great athlete, a guy that I think would fit really well with Dallas Goedert because of his blocking skills and upside with that length and athleticism. Definitely a guy to keep on your radar.
All right, so that is JT Sanders, tight end out of Texas. You can catch him in the game of the week, OU versus Texas. Mark, who is your Eagles target of the week this week?
My Eagles target of the week is who I was going to use last week, and it's cornerback Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's a weird reason, actually. It's because he went out during the Florida State game. And there's a saying that absence makes the heart grow fonder. And Clemson's defense definitely missed Nate Wiggins once he went out in that game. Florida State's offense was being bottled up. Jordan Travis was having his worst day of the season. Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson were both struggling to break free. As soon as Nate Wiggins went out of that game, Florida State's offense immediately turned the corner and immediately made the difference in that game and ended up winning a close one in overtime. Nate Wiggins is expected to come back this week. Clemson not going to play many more important games this season since they're kind of out of the picture. At this point, what they are is strictly almost a scouting watch. Like when you're watching Clemson, it's because of all the guys that are going to get drafted in the NFL draft this year. Maybe they can, go on a run and get to the ACC championship. But outside of that, what you're watching for is guys like Nate Wiggins. But Nate Wiggins, as you guys know, I have types when it comes to players. With edge rushers, I like 6'6" types. In general, I like height, especially at the cornerback position, especially at edge rusher. Here we have 6'2", and he's got long arms. I think that he plays even longer than he is. Going against the big receivers at Florida State, he was able to match up with them pretty much every snap. I think this guy, we'll see what he does throughout the rest of the year, but I think he's a first-round prospect already, regardless of the improvements that he can make throughout the rest of the season. He's a guy who's played since day one at Clemson. He was a 4-star recruit, played a little bit as a freshman, but he played a ton last year as a sophomore and stepped right into a starting role on one of the better defenses in the country last year. So good against the run, good against the pass, super versatile, long arms. I think he's got everything you need to play at the next level.
I think he's super underrated. Super underrated. Like you look at the top players on Clemson: Trotter Jr., Barrett Carter, Andrew Makuba, Will Shipley, Rukaroro, defensive tackle. Like Nate Wiggins, like Marks have said multiple times, like he's a guy that always stands out. Always stands out. He's got an interception for a touchdown, a sack, 2 pass deflections, a tackle for loss in 4 games this year. The dude just fills the stat sheet, man. He always seems to be everywhere. Love Nate Wiggins.
All right. And then we'll move on to my guy. I'm going back to the well with Texas skill position players. I'm going to talk wide receiver Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy was a 4-star recruit who had a track background. Reportedly ran a 10.55 100-meter dash as a sophomore in high school. Reportedly ran a 4.45 40 as a freshman in high school. This guy is speed, which is good because he only weighs 163 pounds. He's 6'1", 163 pounds. He'll probably be the fastest receiver at the combine this coming year. I think he might get into the mid to low 4.2s. He had 62 receptions for 981 yards and 12 touchdowns in 2021. He won the Big 12 Offensive Freshman of the Year award. Last year, he had a bit of a down year. Only 59 catches for 757 yards, 8 touchdowns. So far this year, he's got 345 and 3 touchdowns. But, I led with it. It's speed. And it's not just on go routes. Like, he explodes out of his cuts. He is a really good route runner. does a good job setting up defensive backs before breaking off routes. He's got great ball tracking skills, over the shoulder catches. He's got reliable hands. He's a punt returner. He's got elite yak ability. Like, he's everything you could want from an explosive wide receiver. Now, he needs to get better with his feel against zone coverage, where to throttle down and sit down on routes. He is small. He's handled playing on the line in college well. Press hasn't disrupted him too much. But the NFL is a different ballgame. Now, Devonta Smith did it. Would the Eagles want to have 2 sub-170-pound receivers in their starting lineup? I don't know. He is not a good run blocker because of his size. But I think he's a first-round draft pick. I think he's going to go on day one, especially if he goes and runs at the combine like I think he will. And honestly, I think with these fast guys, a lot of times we just think they're vertical routes. I think he's less of a deep threat than he is a yak threat. I thought last year Texas tried to use him more as a vertical guy, and I thought you saw a decline in his production last year. I think he's better as like a slot guy working underneath than he is just a guy that you're going to send vertical a lot. So Xavier Worthy out of Texas, he's probably going to be behind Oklahoma's secondary like 4 times on Saturday. So keep an eye out for him.
Yeah, he's terrific. Speaking of first round, there's a lot of wide receivers that are fighting for wide receiver too, man. You've got Egbuka, Malik Neighbors, Keon Coleman, Roma Dunze, Troy Franklin. What a battle. What an absolute bloodbath that's going to be. And we could see, a handful of wide receivers go in round 1.
Yeah, Xavier Worthy, future Las Vegas Raider. He's fast. They're going to take him 100%. So
I like that.
Yeah.
All right, let's turn the page now. We've given you your Eagles prospects to watch. Let's go to our player of the week predictions.
You can't manage this, can't break this bar funded. Gotta keep my distance when you not 100. Those the same ones say they love you, lately funny. You can't match my energy, and yeah, you know it. Way too cold, yeah, man, I'm way too cold. Way too cold, yeah, man, I'm way too cold.
All right, let's talk player of the week predictions. I'm bringing us in on the wrong segment here. It's a late night. Dives, why don't you lead us off before I say something else dumb?
I'm going to go with one of the most underrated wide receivers in college football right now. I mean, we've talked about some heavy hitters. Let's talk about Trey Harris out of Ole Miss, who is putting up video game-esque numbers, man. Been doing it since the season started. On last Saturday, man, him and Jackson Dart were absolutely sensational and a huge upset win. They look good, man. He's got great chemistry with Jackson Dart, as I said. He had a game-winning touchdown with 39 seconds remaining in the fourth quarter. He's got 7 touchdowns. That's the most in college football. He's 6'2". He's 205 pounds. Elite contested catch guy. Can do damage in open field. Great short area quickness. Has the size and strength you're looking for. Definitely draws some comparisons to Rashee Rice, who I feel like I've mentioned more than once on this show for some reason. But I see this guy. I came in to this season with this guy as like a day 3 guy, but like he looks more and more as a day 2 guy. And Ole Miss takes on Arkansas this week, and the Razorbacks give up the 4th most passing touchdowns per game in the SEC. So there's definitely a weak spot there with how much Dart likes to throw downfield and make big plays. Trey Harris, man, has to be on the top of the list. I believe in this dude. All he does is get touchdowns, and probably one of the best stories, biggest winners of this young college football season.
All right, so Trey Harris out of Ole Miss is Dives' player of the week selection. Mark, how about you? Who are you taking this week?
Mine's a bit of a cop-out, but I'm going with Drake May. I feel like you get to use, Drake May, Shador, Caleb, Bo Nix, Penix, like once every once in a while. You got to be smart about when to do it. I think here against Syracuse is a good time to do it. Syracuse made Cade Klubnik look relevant last week. Cade Klubnik is a bad quarterback, and they made Clemson look like a creative offense. So I think Drake May and the North Carolina weapons will make Syracuse's defense look even worse than Clemson did last week. I like North Carolina -8.5 that game, so there's a way to sneak in a bet there. But Drake May hasn't had the standalone, standout, put him on the Heisman map performance yet this year. He's had good ones. He hasn't had a bad game. I mean, South Carolina, 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 2 picks. Against App State, he had only 208 yards, no touchdowns. Minnesota, 414 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he had 2 picks, took a bunch of sacks. And then against Pitt, 300 yards and a touchdown, probably his most clean and complete game of the year. He's still 11th in QBR in the country. He's still been one of the best quarterbacks in the country. But he hasn't had that, I'm Drake May, I'm going top 2 next year, stop putting other people in my conversation game yet. And I think that could be coming this week. I think we get a big time game out of Drake May, Omarion Hampton, and the whole North Carolina offense.
All right. And then for my player of the game prediction, I'm going to pick a guy that I would hazard a guess that most of our listeners have never even heard his name before because he plays football at Troy. And you're probably not watching a lot of Troy football, but it is running back Kimani Vidal. He is the running back for Troy. They play Arkansas State this weekend, who is allowing 164 yards per game on the ground. Meanwhile, Vidal is 5th in rushing yards. He's only 7 yards behind third place, so he is up there in terms of production. He has 32 forced missed tackles this season on 102 carries. That's a pretty great ratio. 6th in the NCAA in forced missed tackles. He's got 3.91 yards after contact per carry. He is a bowling ball. He will run you over. He's got better burst and agility than you would like, or than you would think for that kind of a running back. I just love running backs that can run you over. Mark talked about having types. My type at running back is a guy that will just truck you all day. But in spite of what I've said about him being this power style of running back, he's got 16 runs of over 10 yards this year, which is tied for 8th in the NCAA. So you can talk about the competition he's played against, but he's a breakaway run threat as well. So Kimani Vidal for Troy, going to have a big game against Arkansas State this weekend. I'm sticking to it.
It was a struggle to make that graphic.
I was surprised you had a graphic. So
I made one today. I have no idea who that is.
Oh, okay. Well, tune in this weekend.
How did that come across your desk?
How did he come across my desk?
In general, yeah. Was it an Arkansas State's bad against running back situation or this guy's really good situation? OU ran all over Arkansas State, so I knew their rushing defense was really bad, and I knew that Vidal was up there. I'd watched a highlight video of. I'm not gonna lie to you and say I watch a lot of Troy games, but I'd seen a highlight video of him on YouTube, and then it just all clicked for me. Like, oh, they play Arkansas State this weekend, so let's make the pick. All right, now let's talk our game of the week. We alluded to it earlier. Half of our players we talked about today come from this game. It is the Red River rivalry. Number 12 Oklahoma versus number 3 Texas at the Cotton Bowl at noon on Saturday. This is only the 3rd time that OU and Texas have met while both being at least 5-0. The other 2 times being 2008 and 2002. Last year, Texas blew out Oklahoma. We don't talk about that around here, but Oklahoma signed 7 top 300 recruits and have allowed only 54 points this season, which is the fewest by a Big 12 team in the first 5 games since 2009 when OU also did it. This is the first time Texas is 5-0 since 2009 when they won the Big 12 championship. Last weekend, Oklahoma lit up Iowa State with 523 total yards of offense. Texas lit up Kansas with 661 yards of offense. This could be an offensive shootout. Could be a defensive struggle. A lot of it's going to come down to the quarterbacks because both of these quarterbacks can run a bit hot and cold. Dibes mentioned it earlier with Quinn Ewers. He has 2 games this season under a 65 QBR. He's got one 81, and then he's got 2 that are over 90.
Dylan Gabriel, the quarterback for OU, has 2 games in the high 60s and 3 in the high 90s. Like, it's all over the place with these guys. It's going to be which quarterback shows up, which defense is able to get in a quarterback's head early. Dibes, how do you feel about this game? What do you kind of see?
Yeah, Quinn Ewers already had kind of a moment in week 2. I think they had that huge win against Alabama and Tuscaloosa, right? But there's tons of prospects in this one. You mentioned it, Quinn Ewers, Worthy, Mitchell Adonai Mitchell is a great wide receiver prospect. JT Sanders already touched on. Barron Sorrell is a really good linebacker edge rusher for Texas as well. For Oklahoma, we have linebacker Danny Stutzman, who we covered last week. Offensive tackle Tyler Guyton. Both of those are big-time prospects. And I'm going to just play devil's advocate, and I'm going to say a guy, it is probably all on the quarterbacks, but a guy that had major shoes to fill in replacing Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson in 2023 is Jonathan Brooks, Texas running back Jonathan Brooks, man. The guy played just 5 games last year, averaged 7.5 yards per carry. He was dominant against Kansas last week, went off for 218 yards, 2 scores, over 10 yards per carry. Over the last 3 games, Brooke is averaging 162 yards per game on a ridiculous line of 8.1 yards per carry. And then you get to Oklahoma, who's 28th best in the country in defending the run, giving up 105 yards per game on the ground. Quinn Ewers, this is his moment to shine. But between the numbers, between the sticks, man, that matchup between Danny Stutzman trying to slow down Jonathan Brooks could be a really good one. So that's what I'm watching.
Yeah, he was almost my player of the week prediction, but I couldn't bring myself to pick a Texas player for player of the week. So, all right, Mark, what about you? What do you have going on? What are your thoughts on this game? Is there anything you like about the spread? Where are you at with this one?
Yeah, this is a Texas play for me. I'm sorry, Shane. Horns up. But I'm taking Texas -6. I don't think I've seen enough over the last year to convince me that Venables has closed the gap that we saw last year in a 49-0 beatdown in the Red River Shootout. I think Oklahoma hopes to be where Sark has Texas in a couple years, because this is year 4 or 5 for Sark at Texas. He's gotten his guys there. This is his recruiting class now. Like, this is his vision for the program. Venables is still molding what that is and still taking over for Lincoln Riley. Still has a lot of Riley guys around. I just don't think Oklahoma's advanced far enough yet to close the gap we saw last year. I think you look at what Oklahoma has played so far this year, and it's just been a really cupcake schedule. And I know Shane has complained about the play calling and a lot of screens, a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage. And I think you get away with a lot of that with Dylan Gabriel when you're playing Tulsa and SMU and Cincinnati and Iowa State. But Texas, I think, is a little bit of a different situation. And since Texas beat Bama and put 34 on Bama, that Bama defense has been impenetrable. That Bama defense has been the best in the country since that. So I think Texas is every bit of a title contender, and I'd be shocked if Texas lost this game. So I'm taking Texas with the spread.
All right. So there you have it. Dibes, did you give a pick on this game? Which way do you lean? Do you lean Texas?
Man, I haven't watched enough Oklahoma football to really have a firm grasp on this one. Again, it's going to all depend on which Quinn Ewers we get on Saturday. That is just massive. Quinn Ewers, his knack or like kind of right up is how he handles pressure. He really struggled with that last year, beating the blitz. And if he does that well on Saturday, I don't think Oklahoma has a chance. There's just too many playmakers on that Texas offense. I'm going to go Texas here.
All right. I'm going to abstain from making a pick because I want to be able to show my face around my state. But you can read into that what you would like to. So, There you have it, guys. We gave you some Eagles prospects to watch. You can keep an eye on JT Sanders, Xavier Worthy in that OU Texas game, Nate Wiggins from Clemson. Obviously, tune into OU Texas at noon on Saturday, as well as many other great games going on this weekend. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode of the BGN Draft Show. If you enjoyed the show, be sure you hit that subscribe button so you get every single show on the BGN radio feed. You can check us out on Twitter. I'm at Shane Half NFL. Dibes is at Mr. Crockpot. Mark is at Mark Henry Jr. We will catch you guys next week for another episode of the BGN Draft Show.
Yeah. Let's go. We just gotta go hard.